We
Are
are
you?
live.
Oh,
What's going
yes, we
on,
are.
brother?
What's going on, bro?
Let's go. It's good. This is Jesse,
I'm Ruben.
and welcome again to the Hidden Health Podcast. Man, it feels good to say that again. It's been a long time. It's been a
Round
long
two
time,
here,
man.
round two. I know, man. We had such a great discussion last time. Now we get to continue that discussion.
Yeah, man. So I guess let's just jump into it. How was your week? How has again, for those who are just tuning in, a little reminder, Ruben and I are training for a 10K Spartan race and a half marathon trail run in February 2021. Um, this will be our first competition. This will be the biggest uh, fitness test we've ever had. And so we are documenting our journey and how our training's been going and everything that's going on. So yeah, let's dive into it. If you wanna start.
Yeah, man. It was a pretty easy, I'd say easy week because I know this is the last week before I start running into 3 milers. So those 2 milers actually got pretty easy this week, except for one. And that was yesterday. That was yesterday's because I we went out, we spent the day out hiking. Um, and so we went hiking, we went to the beach after that. We kind of walked around the little town near the beach. And both going to the beach and coming back was about 3 hours in total of driving. So I'm sitting in a car. So I did my stretching in the morning, but I was just like, it's probably smart to do it again before I go to my runs. I got back home, freaking exhausted. I'm like, damn, I really didn't want to do this run, bro. Like it was to everyone out there, like those times when you don't feel like going to the gym or you don't feel like doing something, it's so easy to just be like, I could just do it tomorrow or maybe use the rest day and just do it then. Like all the excuses you could think of, bro, came up, like everything. And I had to obviously find it inside myself somewhere to override that mechanism, my inner David Goggins, my inner Jocko Willing. That's like, you should have did it this morning. You have to do it, like, and it's gonna be hard. It's hot as hell. It's like it's like it was like 5:30 p.m. So the heat was just building throughout the day. It's humid. I was just like, I have to go do it. So I did my stretching, which I wanted to do anyway, because sitting in a car for an hour and a half without like just going straight is definitely not good for your body. So I stretched that out for like 15, 20 minutes. And I just put my shoes on, I put my shorts on. I was like, I'm not putting on the shirt because it's too hot. And I don't like that feeling of the shirt sticking. And I was like, I'm gonna go for this run.
I love that
Now,
feeling.
you love that feeling?
I
I
love
don't.
that feeling.
I
It
just like
feels
the
so nice.
feeling of the sweat like dripping, but not when the shirt is
You
like
just made everyone
suction.
who's listening to this vomit a little in their mouth.
Probably.
So thank you, Ruben.
Sorry guys,
Thanks
sorry guys.
for thanks for that.
But the worst part was I ate an hour before that, and I had a In-N-Out protein style burger. Now, In-N-Out protein style burger is no buns. It's just a lettuce bun with two burger patties, cheese, and onion. So I had that an hour before. And I was like, oh, an hour is enough time to digest. Not as you get older, maybe when you're young and you're 18, 19, 20, an hour, your body is, the thermic effect in your body is just ridiculous. You're always hungry because you're growing. But now I'm realizing, like, no, it probably takes much longer than that for my body now. And I started running like that, like by the halfway point of my first mile, dude, I'm just feeling the stitch coming. The stitch started hitting me really hard, but I fought through it. Then the app that I used told me like, "Hey, you hit a mile," and I'm just dying, bro. I'm like clenching. I'm running like slow, so my mile was like 11 minutes. I got it down to like 9 minutes and 40 seconds my last run, but I was just in pain, so I slowed down a lot. And I'm like holding on to it. I had to stop. I like walked a little. I did some deep breathing, put my hands above my shoulders because that's what they say when you have a stitch. Put your hands and start deep breathing. It kind of started going away. Went back into the run. It came again. I was just like, oh my god. it hurt so bad, that stitch. It just felt like all the food was still in my stomach and my body was just like, what are you doing? But I just fought through it. I mean, I walked once after that, like when I hit 2.5 miles. But when I looked at and I saw that was 2.5 miles, I was just like, stop being a bitch. You need to finish, and finish right. Like, stop walking. So I just went back into the jog and just really fought with myself. I was like, I had a podcast on. I had to turn it off because I could not focus on the podcast I was listening to. I was listening to Jocko, the Jocko podcast, but I could not pay attention. I was just thinking about this pain, and that's all my body was paying attention. I was just like, I had to put that mechanism, one foot in front of the other, bro. Just keep going, one foot in front of the other, one foot in front of the other, and just have that little mantra in my head. And once I hit 2 miles, I just stopped. I was just like, I did it. But yeah, that was the hardest I had this week, and it was a great experiment and a learning lesson, about eating before you go out to run. I'd rather do it in a fasted state. But
Yeah,
what
and
do you think?
I think probably, I mean, maybe I don't know the science behind it. Maybe there is something to do with age, but I also think the fact that you had like two burgers, like so much protein. Protein, I feel like digests pretty slowly in general. So that was probably what gave you that shit show. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. Like that's what you hear a lot when it comes to athletics, and when it comes to because I guess in the past have looked at athletes and I was like, man, their job is so easy. Like all they have to do is train, right? But but it's that, right? That's what matters. It matters when you don't want to fucking do it, and that's what separates like the good athletes from the fucking great are the ones who even in those moments will go out and get it done. And imagine like that was only 2 miles. Like imagine when you have to start doing like 8 miles, 9 miles, 10, like these are hours of running that you're going to have to realize that you have to go and do this, And I think, and that's something that's come up for me this week too, is like preparation, right? Because there's a lot of leeway when you're doing a half-hour run and maybe an hour run. But once you start going into the longer runs, like you have to really have everything else in check, because if you don't, the first thing to go is going to be that thing you don't want to do, right? So yeah, like you said, like you should have done in the morning. It's like, well, now now next time you're gonna have to realize that you should do it in the morning. So that's crazy. Yeah, it's cool. How was I had a sort of similar experience this week, which was so I had done I think 2 3 mile runs last week, and then this week was 3 3 mile runs. And so by the end of the week, it had gotten to a point where it was just like monotonous, like the excitement of running, because I'm not adding mileage. I'm just doing 3 miles. And I'm a type of person that loves like, give me a greater and greater challenge. Excuse me. Give me a greater and greater challenge. And that's where like the mindset, that's where the programming becomes so important, right? Because if it was just based off of feeling, I would have either not done it or I would have done more, because I just wanted like something new. And I think that's also one of those things where it's not just enough that you get your training done, but like you, once that initial phase of like excitement and motivation that you're doing this new thing goes away, it really is monotonous. Like it stopped being exciting already. And it's only been like, it's been maybe about a month of training for me. And I'm just like, yeah, this is what I do. And I'm just going to keep doing it because I said I was going to do it. But there's no part of me that was like, man, like I'm excited. And I'll probably feel that again, especially as the miles go up. And just depending on my mood, like I'll probably feel excited to do it again. But yeah, it was just one of those things that I just had to get out there and get it done. And it makes you like reevaluate the perspective, or it made me really reevaluate the perspective I have on the people who I admire, because even though they're doing really cool shit, to them it may not always be cool shit. they just know people think it's cool shit, and so they share it and post it. But I don't know if Cam, who runs like a marathon every day, if every day he's excited about running that marathon. You know, a lot of times he has to. Um, I'm sure he draws motivation from other places, and that was something I've been thinking about, which is like how, because we were talking about last time, like that docu series about the
Last time.
'90s Bulls, yeah, the Last
Yeah.
Dance, and you see like I think one of the biggest reasons Jordan was the best was one of the if not one of the best was that he drew inspiration from everywhere, and maybe that inspiration was anger, and they may not always be the best place to draw inspiration from, but he would just find every way possible to be like, all right, this is like, he gave me the wrong look. All right, great. Now I'm about to go ham, you know, and in some ways, like I'm starting to notice there has to be other things that I get excited about doing, um, to do that, especially as the miles get bigger. That's something that's in the back of my head constantly. It's like, what am I going to do when I have to go run 10 miles and I'm out there for almost 2 hours or something like that, you know? Um, and so that was super interesting. What about you? How does that resonate?
It's still pretty exciting because I'm once again, you're like, as if you didn't listen to the first episode, Jesse is ahead by about a week and a half, I believe. So I'm behind about a week and a half, but it's been 2 weeks. I mean, I like it. The downside is because it is COVID, and where I live, like everything is kind of locked down. And apparently, like if you're on the street, you have to have a mask on. And I refuse to wear a mask if I'm running because it's just gonna get smelly, sweaty, disgusting. I definitely don't want to deal with that or possibly get sick because you're just breathing in the same bacteria and all those things. So I've been running around my little apartment complex. There's like these oval parking lots that exist.
Yeah, I noticed that. Like, cause your runs show up on Map My Run. I'm like,
Yeah,
where's this dude running? Like, he's running in like this weird like E shape.
yeah, it's like yeah. So I'm doing these all the parking lots that exist,
Uh-huh.
and there's four of them. So it's for 2 miles. It takes me. I have to do them twice,
Mm.
right? But eventually, when we start getting up, I'm like, it's getting boring to just see that, and then sometimes there's cars, so I have to like kind of like veer off, and I kind of I lose my pace. Like I get a healthy pace, especially if you're like going straight. Your form is right, everything's right, and you're like, okay, I feel good. I don't have to think about that anymore. But because I have to pivot and like move to the side a little bit, it causes me to have to reevaluate that. Where is my foot landing when I step to the side? Like all these things that have to be
Hmm.
evaluated so I don't get injured. Um, so I was like, I'm gonna have to either go to like those flat trails that exist. There's some flat trails around here, and just start doing that because obviously, there are a lot of runners, and I've been on these trails and I go hiking, and not, people are wearing masks if they go close to one, but most runners just pick up their shirt, go like that when people are like close by. I was just like, I could do that. So I'm looking for a nice trail that's at least like 5 or 6 miles until I get to that point, and I can do over 5 or 6 miles. Maybe just go back and forth or something, and be out in nature. So kind of be a double whammy. So I'm like
Yeah,
trying to
that's
think
good.
ahead because be running the same loops
It's gonna
gets
drive you
very,
wild.
very boring, very, very fast. Like at least you
Well,
got Central Park, so
there's a race. I think it's actually in New York. There's a race that is 3,100 miles, and it's just on a 1 mile loop. Yeah,
I've
it's just
heard
on
of
one
that.
loop. I think Joe DeSena talked about it, like his whatever tribe his mother was a part of. Um, there's a 3,100 mile race in New York, and it could take you like 5 days to complete, and it's just a 1 mile loop over and over and over again. So
You need your
that shit is
mindfulness
crazy.
level to be like up there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. You know what else was coming up for me this week is like, because I don't want to just compete. I also want to be. I want to win. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Maybe not this time around, but at some point. And what was really fascinating to me was I was watching some documentaries on Iron Man, And a lot of these top pros, like some of them had been like previous like Olympic competitors, or they were or they had like a history in athletics, but a good amount of them were also just people who were fuck ups who then like did didn't know what to do with their lives, and so they stuck to either running or they stuck to biking or swimming, or they took up something, and it led them down a path to Ironman, and then they just crushed it. You know, like they just became one of the best. So like I was like, well, fuck, I don't even have that. You know, I just started a little bit later in life, and it'd be super cool to achieve something like that. Is that, would you ever want to go that far as like an elite level, or do you just want to do it?
Well, I think right now, and I've thought of that like heavily because I have competitiveness. While I was never placed in any sports growing up, I went to Abraham Lincoln. If y'all don't know Abraham Lincoln in Brooklyn, New York,
Yo,
that's where
shout
like
out.
Stephon Marbury came from there. His cousin came Telfair, I think Sebastian Telfair. I forget his name, but he's also an NBA player that came out of there. A lot of sports people, like it was very known for their sports, right? Like even the
Mm,
Lincoln football team was pretty good, right? And with varsity. But I didn't go there for that. I just went there because it was my zone school. Because once again, like you mentioned, like I was just a fuck up. Like I didn't have great grades in junior high school. I was a bad kid. Growing up without dad, it's very common to be a pretty bad kid. And I've spoken about that a lot in season 1 of the Hidden Health podcast. But I definitely was like, I am competitive. I at least I was like, look, I want to get top top 10 if I can. Like, great. But worst case for me is like as long as I'm somewhere in the front. Like I don't know how many people are gonna
mm,
be in this thing, right? But I don't want to be the last one going. I was like, I definitely want to be that person. I want to at least hit like middle to high. Like middle to high for the first time would be good enough.
yeah.
And then like the excitement of it will probably like propel me forward to be like, how can you hit the number one spot? Because one, I don't know who's doing these races. I need to see who is on the top. So that observation first, like, what's that winner
Yeah.
do? Like, what can I befriend him or her and be
Mm,
like, what do you do to get to this level, right?
yeah.
Like, what are you eating? How often are you training? What's your day to day? Do I have to quit my job? Like, you know what I mean?
Well,
Like
yo,
how much focus?
speaking of that, like that was one thing that came up for me when I was like, man, like I love the company I'm working with, and even honestly, even if I did get to this point, I think I'd still want to uh, have some form of career outside if possible, because um, I guess I would just want to be able to flex those different parts of myself. But the idea of like becoming like a world class athlete, not even world class, honestly, at this point, just some level of proficiency. And then you get sponsors and you can get clients and stuff. And you just get paid to train and perform, and like
Exactly.
that's a life, that's a cool life.
Yeah.
Um,
What
yeah,
comes up for me when you just said that? Because it's not only racing, right? It's like all these other like immense activities that exist, right? I think of Colin O'Brady. I don't know if you've heard him on his podcast. He created a book called Impossible First. He was the first man to walk all of the Antarctica carrying like this 300-pound sled in his
yes,
back.
I saw that interview
Um,
with Joe.
right. And he's not like a racer or any of that. Like he's just done things where he won the like Guinness World Records of doing all the 7 top peaks around the world
Wow.
in a certain amount of time, right? Like that's what he got big for, and that's why he got sponsorships and all these things. What's cool about his story, and he's been on Joe Rogan's podcast twice. I've heard him on, I think he was on Impact Theory. I've heard him in a few places, and I looked him up and like read throughout like all his stuff because I was like, this is a fantastic, amazing human who's been able to do all these feats, and he's not even muscular. He looks like your average Joe. You know what I mean? Like your average kind of guy, from Portland, Oregon. Um, and I was reading it. I'm just like, oh, like him, you know, his wife is like his coordinator. She's the one that sets everything up and plans everything for him. But because of doing this, he's been able to create a life around it, right? Whether that's getting the sponsorships or writing a book or, you know, I don't know if he does coaching for people in terms of like getting their bodies ready for these feats. But it's like, I wouldn't mind having a life like that. Like he does speaking engagements and all those things. You know what I mean? Like there's something about it where it's like, you just have to be a pretty good at what you do and maybe do it different than what everyone else is doing, whether that's running 1 mile for 3,100 miles. Like, I'm pretty sure the first human to do that, he's pretty good or she's pretty good. You know, like they're living a good life. And I
Yeah.
started thinking about like, how can I create that? You know, obviously we have our goals, but like, how can we use that to as leverage to create the life that we really want? Because I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure, like you said, I like what I do. I like my job. I get to support and help out tons of people, and be an inspiration to those folks and give them the tools necessary to be successful in life. I get to do that, but I'm not fuck yes about it. I'm not 110%,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, oh, I like what I do, but do I love it? I can't lie and be like, I do love it.
Mm.
What I love is to help people in this sense and being like, you know, understanding that your body is this beautiful thing and like your mindset is everything. And like those two
Yeah.
things connected can make you into this invincible, like badass human being, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, and you
So,
know, like my brother is a huge basketball fan. And just to backtrack when we were talking about like sponsorships and stuff like that, the interesting thing about that, and he mentioned this, you know, they say Michael, this could be a controversial statement, but they say, and I'm saying this as a person who knows jack shit about basketball. He just knows people who really love it and talk about it a lot. And so, you know, I was talking to him about the docuseries, and what he was saying was like, well, you know, what's interesting about a guy like Michael Jordan is you take a player like Vince Carter, and apparently Vince Carter was considered to be better than Michael Jordan just on performance. Like by his performance, he was considered to be the best basketball player of all time. But no one fucking says that because he didn't have the personality. He also didn't necessarily have the team, to my understanding, that Mike had. But even more than that, uh, if you look at just the individual, like Vince was a much quieter guy. He was a much more lax, like to himself kind of guy. Versus Mike was obviously very like out there and was like willing to show up and do stuff and I do a lot of public stuff. And so yeah, I think to some degree, you don't even necessarily need to be one of the best athletes, especially nowadays, right? Because people like brands pay influencers based on their ability to influence and to create good content, right? So if you're someone who can do those things and you have a great personality, you're way more likely to be successful than the person who's just a high performer but is bad on camera and doesn't want to really put themselves out there, which isn't a problem, you know. And I at the end of the day, to some level, I respect the person who's a higher performer because they're doing what is meant to be done out there. But there's a realm of possibility that's out there, especially now. Like I think about it, like um, the level of understanding of recovery and cell regeneration and all these things, like your ability to transform your body and to make it perform at a very high level is possible. And again, we're both noobs, so we might not know what the fuck we're talking about.
right.
So if you're like a professional athlete and you're listening to this and like these guys are fucking stupid, well, come on the podcast, come teach us, come tell us what we're doing wrong and the shit we're making up here. But um, I think that's a better way of looking at things than the opposite, right? Of just saying like, well, it's too late, you know, it's too late in our lives to really start taking this seriously. So, you know, let's just do it for fun. It's like, nah, fuck it. Let's try to see what we can make happen, right? And and something else you said about the whole mental game. It's like what I love about fitness is that it's so direct. Like there's nothing more direct about your mental fortitude than fitness because it's just a direct response. Like, are you able? It's not even like it's not just are you able to push this workout, right? That's part of it, but it's like are you able to do it over and over again? Are you able to take it easy when you're supposed to take it easy? Are you able to go hard when you're supposed to go hard? Are you able to treat it like how detached can you be from your training, right? And how often do you get emotional about it? You know, because like that what you experienced, like what you were sharing in the beginning of the podcast of like the stitch and the morning and that you were tired, like these are just emotions, right? None of this actually matters. Like this whole story doesn't actually matter. It doesn't mean anything other than the emotional sort of roller coaster you went on trying to convince yourself to do that. So yeah, I think you're right. I think it's super fascinating, and if not anything else, even if you're not teaching people necessarily, I think that's why so many people are fascinated by guys like Jocko or Cameron or
David Goggins.
or Goggins, especially Goggins. It's like they're not necessarily going to them for like, hey, teach me how to do an ultra marathon. They're going to them 'cause it's like, who do you have to become to do an ultra marathon? Like where does your brain have to be to accomplish something like that? Yeah. So it's super interesting what the doors we're potentially opening for ourselves by doing this.
Right. And I have a lot of confidence in the fact that our bodies will adapt to it, because our bodies are these amazing things that nature created, right? And it's smarter than we think. Like, we try to make science do all these things, but it's like the body knows. Like, once you become self-aware enough, because something I've been working on with the current client I'm working on in coaching is just like, you can say these things to this person, but are they so self-aware that they know that this is happening? I can tell them, like, this is what your body is going through. If this is what your body is going through, then you do this. It's like, oh, for people, it's not that simple. It's just like, I need to help them become more self-aware of what's going on. Like, so we work on, like, are you journaling enough? What happens what comes up for you in this? What comes up for you in that? Like, what are you feeling right now? Like, working with that, like, you need to be more self-aware. You need to train your self-awareness. Because even when we're training like this, we need to know, like, when's recovery. I know we use the Whoop band. We both have it. And they'll say, like, this is your recovery today. Today, my recovery was 41%. And basically, I was like, I know after my run, I already hit my strain for today. But, like, should I run at 41%? That's the first thing that came to my mind. I was like, you still have to. You're training for something. Like, regardless, you have to do this. But just be careful. Make sure you're doing enough stretching. Make sure you're having ample amounts of water. Like, all these other things. Make sure you take your bath tonight and with Epsom salt to, like, heal the body. Make sure you're taking your cold showers. Like, make sure you're getting your sun. Like, all these things.
Yeah.
Also
Pacing, right? It's like that's something I learned recently, which is like, if you have to do the run and your recovery is really low, just pace at a lower heart rate, run at a lower heart rate, run slower than maybe what your usual is. Because you're still getting that cadence and that movement, and you're just not taxing your system as much. So yeah, 100%.
Yeah, no, I don't know if you listen to Joe Rogan as much as I do, but he had this guy on his podcast. They had like a 4-hour podcast, so it took me a few days to get it through. And the guy lived with a tribe for like a few months in, I think, South
You're talking
America.
about
Did you
David
hear that
Cho?
one? David Cho, yeah. Did
Yeah.
you listen to the whole
Yeah,
thing or
I
no?
listened to that whole thing. It's amazing. It is an
It was
amazing
amazing.
episode.
But something that he was talking about that really, like, that I really grabbed too, because it was a 4-hour podcast. I'm sure I didn't listen to, like, every piece, but one thing that really came to me was when he was living with those tribes, and like, how much they run to catch their prey, right? Like, when they go hunt, and how he couldn't keep up. Like, these guys are going for miles and miles and miles and miles. And I remember thinking that running was unnecessary as a human being. We usually just sprint, but that was completely, like, demolished. I was like, actually, if you have to hunt, you're running for miles, right? So your legs have to be built to run for those miles. And I was just like, oh shit, so we are meant to, like, run those miles and run in different, not on a flat surface, but run up hills, down hills, all these different ways of movement. And it really made me think. So like running should be a part of a workout, like whatever workout you create for a client, as coaches, like some form of running should be there, especially, if a client is too heavy on the heavier side, we do not recommend running, because they can fuck up their knees like really bad. So we start with like the walking, make sure they take care of the nutrition, and maybe some strength training so they can build more muscle that can burn more fat and all these things that we talk about. But I learned that like running is vital. I think it's very important that we do that often as human beings, because there's like a whole culture out there saying running is unnecessary. I think Dave Asprey is one of those people, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, they say running, like sprinting is great, but they say running is bad because long bouts of cardio, if you have imbalances in your body and if you are metabolically unfit, can definitely cause damage, and cause you're most susceptible to injury. And if you're not supplementing your training with enough strength training, you can lose muscle mass. And so typically, like running, and plus you also adapt, like you adapt to running really fast. So if you're trying to lose fat, for example, the amount of you become more efficient at burning calories because you're running. So it can become harder to lose weight again if you're not super smart about it. And so it can be difficult. But yeah, like running. So one of the things I learned when I was working at the Czech Institute, which was really interesting, was so running was actually what gave us the advantage over big animals before we had actual tools, because it was like, well, we can't necessarily fight off this animal, but we can run longer than this animal. And so basically they would outrun this animal to the point of this animal having a heat stroke and dying, essentially. And that's how they used to kill animals before there were tools available. Was they would just, or maybe even when the tools first started, they were just like, well, we can hunt this animal longer than this animal could run away from us. And so they would just chase it all fucking day long till that animal was just like, fuck it, I'm done. And
But that's the
and
beauty
pass out.
of us. But that's the beauty
Yeah.
of wolves, because they do that. Did you know that
Oh,
the
really?
wolves
No, I didn't know
they
that.
that's why wolves can run for like insane distances, like insane, bro, hundreds of miles in a day. They can just keep going. And it's because like when a pack is hunting, a massive like bison or something like
Yeah.
that, those things can hurt a wolf. A wolf is very nimble, but like they can break their bones. A bison
Mm.
is huge, right?
Wow.
So when I've watched the documentaries and the books I've read, that wolves, what they'll do is they'll chase it and stop, and then chase it and stop, and chase it and stop, because they're tiring it out, especially if it's a healthy bison. And especially, and a wolf is hungry, it's like, I don't have a lot of energy, so I have to use it sparingly. So they're very freaking smart. And evolution, yeah, we went different routes, but we still have some of that
Yeah.
inside of us, right? Like that DNA is probably part of us. And wolves, the fact that they do that, and they'll pick at the back hinds of the bison to wear it down. They wear it down slowly
Mm.
until it can't go anymore.
Mm.
And then they'll go for the finishing blow, which is usually the alpha wolf, or the alpha female wolf will grab at the neck and just like tear it off, right?
Mm.
So it's crazy how we as human beings back in the day, millions of years ago, we're doing this, and
Yeah.
we were like tiring it out. So it's fascinating how nature can even create something like that.
Did you ever watch the show Cosmos with Neil deGrasse Tyson?
No, I haven't.
Yo, we started watching it. It's dope. And one of you may know this because I know you've read a lot of books about wolves and dogs and stuff. But do you know how like wolves evolved to be like our pets as dogs? It's just
Somewhat. I
fascinating.
mean, there's been movies and stuff, but like not entirely.
So it's sort of fascinating. So and the way he explains it in the show is basically, you know, when humans began hunting animals, big game, um, the wolves would come and basically smell the meat and be like, I want some of that shit, right? And so, but these wolves would start attacking, and humans would kill the wolves because you're trying to eat our meat. And what also started to happen was, well, they knew that the wolves were hungry and that they wanted the meat. So sometimes they would leave bones behind, or they'd leave like little bits and pieces of meat behind. And over time, the wolves learned that they could eat more consistently if they were kinder and more gentler with humans. So they started to actually evolve to become more aesthetically pleasing to humans. So like, because what they found is that the cuter ones, the more patient ones were more accepted into uh, into human life. And because they were kinder, because they spent more time around them, they were given food. And so that's how they evolved to actually become our like pets and stuff like that. So it's pretty crazy.
That's insane.
Yeah,
And they're like
it's pretty
man's
cool.
best friend, you know, the best
Yeah,
companion you can have is
yeah,
a dog.
yeah. And that's when we essentially started using them as like tools to go and hunt, help us on our hunt and stuff like that. So it's crazy.
Yeah. I
It's
mean, they
crazy.
have their
Yeah.
noses for hunting. They were the ones who would catch, like, oh, I have a scent for this animal, and we can go chase it, you know? It's crazy.
Yeah.
Nature is a
So
big,
what, so you
beautiful thing.
starting,
Go ahead.
yeah. So uh, you're starting your 3 miles this coming week?
Yes, sir. I mean, it's only one time this week, and then I think next week it's three times.
Two
Once or
times,
twice.
yeah.
I gotta
Two
look.
times and then 3 times. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's cool, man. Well, dope. I mean, there's so many other things I think left to talk about, but I'd love to save it for maybe the next episode as far as like
right.
what we're doing with our nutrition and stuff like that. So, is there anything else you wanna share with the people?
Um, Not too much. I think we went over. Definitely want to get into nutrition, but I think that's going to be a whole episode on its own. So
Yeah.
definitely should save that for next time to keep y'all, waiting till next week.
Yeah, for sure. All right.
All
Well,
right, y'all.
um, otherwise, I think this is good. And yeah, look forward to another episode of our journey here. I think we're also going to start working on getting some guests back on the show to talk about some of these things that maybe could support us in our training, but also support things outside of that. So stay tuned. Thanks for listening in, and you know, I think this week will be interesting now that we're both sort of in a place where we are trying to gain more awareness about our training and how we're adjusting to it. And I'm sure there'll be other challenges that come up and stuff like that. So, to another week of consistency. Let's get it, boy.
Let's get it. Thank you, y'all, for listening.